Today on web design for everyone, using the power of patterns in WordPress. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to Autumn today. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Jo. I'm emceeing in this room this morning, and we're really excited to be bringing a range of different talks. This is our first design talk of the day. So where are our designers at in the room? Excellent. So we're in good company here. And for those of you who aren't designers, hopefully you're going to walk away feeling a little bit more confident about what you can do with WordPress in the design space. Autumn is a product wrangler at Automatic, where she's worked on onboarding flows and site layout tools that harness the power of patterns. She's currently working on novel ways to create custom post types and custom fields with the latest Gutenberg block editor features. And she's a dev who loves design. Me too, yeah. She also has wonderful glasses. Like, how good are these glasses? They're just fantastic. So welcome, Autumn. Please show her a round of applause because it's much easier to start your first WordCamp presentation ever, I believe, in case anyone's playing bingo. I believe you also can tick off a few of those other boxes. So make sure that you catch up and get your selfie with Autumn at the end. Fill out that bingo card, folks. All right. Leave you with it. Welcome, Autumn.
And this is, I don't think this is on. Is it?
Have we got, is Autumn on? Yep, we're good.
It is? Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay. Groovy. Okay. I'm Autumn. Hello. And this talk was originally called Web Design for Devs, but then because I was thinking about myself, but I thought that's not fair because maybe some devs are actually good at design, web design, not like me. So I decided to call it Web Design for Everyone, or Web Design for People like me. And it's basically things that I have learned over the past few years as I've worked with the block editor to try to make sense of how you design in a 2D world. Okay. So I find web design really hard, and I feel like I'm a very creative person. I can put on a cute outfit, I can decorate my house, I can do all these things that turn out well in the 3D world, but I had a really hard time doing that in the 2D world. But there are some tips and tricks you can harness, learn from your design friends. Like, I'm not professional like you guys, but I have managed to make some things work. So I wanted to talk about that. So this starts in the block editor, right? So the block editor is, I think, 5 years in or something like that in WordPress, and it allows the lay person like me or a non-dev to design your own website, to create your own theme, so to speak. And with a little bit of a learning curve, you can have all the tools to make a great website layout. You don't have to be a professional dev or a professional designer. So for me, this starts with the power of patterns. And this is something newish in the lifespan of WordPress. So patterns can give you a power, the building blocks to build a layout, a page layout. And to me, I see the future of WordPress site building as a few simple components, having a great pattern library, understanding how to use the styling tools, and then, of course, your own content, the pictures and the copy you put in. And it should be that easy. It should be easy to find a pattern. It should be easy to think through styles and add your content to make it the site what you want it to be. So the first part of that is finding a great pattern library. And these are coming, I guess, being established right now. So you can Google pattern libraries and find a pattern set that is nice and varied and sophisticated. So I wanted to show a couple examples. Oh, no. Let's see. Is there any way I can get connected to the internet?
Yeah, so UTS, yes.
First you have internet and then you have patterns.
Right. So if we just jump down to, is this touch screen?
No.
So just scroll down, up a little bit. Up.
By checking.
Up. No. Up.
Up.
Here. Click here. In case anyone's wondering how to connect to the internet, we're going to give you a live demo right now.
You are welcome.
And the password is WordCamp with a capital W and a capital C, 24. That was definitely on purpose, just in case anyone needed help getting into the Wi-Fi. You're welcome.
In 10 seconds. All right. That was fast. Okay, so let's start with the WordPress.org pattern library. This would be something, anyone can come and add patterns here, contribute, you can browse, and they're all free, so free is always good. But you see, they're not necessarily a cohesive pattern library or set, and it looks like some of them have very specific styling. And one important thing is that you want your patterns to inherit global styles. So when you style something, it trickles down through the pattern. So that's one option. You can start playing there. WordPress.com also has a pattern library, and I'm quite familiar with these. I worked on some projects with these, and you can see they have a similar look and feel, and they look a little bit wireframey. So they're just waiting for you to add your styles and your content and bring the pizzazz, but they mix and match very well. And you can come here and you can copy the pattern, paste it into your own site. So again, free. Then you can find a pattern shop, and I'm going to plug this wonderful Japanese pattern maker that I met at WordCamp Bangkok a couple years ago. And I'm just plugging him because he was a great guy and he gave a great speech on patterns. But just an example of, you'll find plenty of sites that just have patterns listed on them for you to copy or buy a premium account. Some of you may have heard of the Ollie theme. This theme comes packaged with patterns, and you can see his beautiful landing page. Patterns there front and center. You can get an idea of whatever kind of page layout you want to make, all the building blocks are right there. And Ollie theme has a free version. And a plugin, you can also get a plugin that will offer patterns. And so I played with this one called Twentig for preparation for this. So this is free too. So you can get your pattern library through a plugin or a theme, or just copying from sites that have that. And of course, you can make your own and adapt ones. Once you get the hang of working with them, then you can copy and paste and duplicate and tweak. All right, let's see. Okay, so let's take a peek into WordPress and see how you interact with patterns. This is the browse mode of the editor, and it's, I think, intended to be a little bit for beyond the layperson use if you're styling and you're building things yourself. But nonetheless, there is this nice interface for looking at the pattern library that is on your site. And you can see all the categories here. And I find this nice, like you could have this open while you're doing editing in the site editor. Okay, so that is one way. And then the other way is obviously in the editor when you're actually building your site, and you can access patterns here through the pattern inserter. And I've already set up a site here. So one thing you can see is there's also some nice new tools that have come out called block style variations, and you can apply them per block or per pattern, and this helps create contrast and interesting visual effects that only apply to one pattern. So this is very cool. I think right now it has to be built into the theme, but hopefully they'll expand it so that the end user can create different block styles according to your own design wishes. Okay. So those are the basic ways you interact with patterns. But there's still the thing of, how do you pick the right colors? How do you make your site look good? How do you do that in the 2D world? So this is what I've learned, and I got some tips from my design friends on this to make sure I was going in the right direction. So images are really hard. One thing I found when I was setting up a blog a few years ago is I would find this beautiful theme with all these beautiful images, and as soon as I put in my real-world images, it looked so bad because we are not taking pictures with cohesive design in mind. We're taking pictures of our real lives. But this image right here is very cool, right? None of these images have anything to do with each other. There's purple, there's a tennis ball, there's a cityscape, but what makes it look good is the repetition and the rhythm and the cropping of the little circles. So you get design cohesion and harmony. So this is one way you can take a lot of disparate images and make them look good. And this could work for a product site or your own, or when I was going through this talk, I had a hair salon. If I was building a website for a hair salon, and maybe you have different people's hair colors, different products, and you could set up something like that. Another key thing is similar colors, and this should be kind of obvious, but it wasn't for me. And so you see here these pictures, they don't have anything to do with each other. There's an orange, a statue, some food, and some leaves. But they all end up looking nice together because they have a similar color palette. Another way you can handle this is with the WordPress duotone feature, where you can put a tone on a bunch of images to make them look more similar. And centering. To me, when I looked at this set of images, these are all taken from WordPress themes, there is some zoom in focus on the food. So they all have a similar look and feel about the food. They're not zoomed out from a table that includes silverware and a glass of wine. They're zoomed in. They have roughly similar centering. And then a similar mood. And this is really subjective, but when we look at these pictures here, some are black and white, some are of an ocean, a field, and a strange staircase, but they all have a similar mood, and that mood is like, go out and explore something or learn something. It's kind of a mystery. They just somehow work together because they have maybe inspire a feeling. And so I think if you have a subset of any of these harmonious combinations, you can make disparate images work. Another important tool is section contrast. And this is a really extreme example, right? It's a rainbow, but it's nice. It looks nice to me, but this is a stylistic opinion. But the contrast makes it interesting. More typically, you see a website like this, where there's a contrast of image and color, and you see everything is earthy tones. But if it was just white in that image, it wouldn't look as nice. And so going for section contrast is important. And that touches on the block styles feature that I showed earlier. And taking a look at other websites that do this, you see how common it is. And then for me, making sense of color was really hard because I just wanted to make a website with all of the purples. And it didn't look good, and I don't know why that wouldn't look good, because it looks good when I get dressed like that. So I found this site, Colors, Coolers, and it is so cool. So you could just press the space bar, and it cycles through all these different palettes of colors. Oh. So you can find, okay, of course, I'm going to lock the purple here, and then I click the space bar, and it holds the purple for me, and it cycles through other colors. And then you get this set that is designed by a designer, and you can take that and make your own color palette in WordPress. So this is very nice. And you can upload an image. So if you have a set of images and maybe you're building a website for someone else, they've given you some images, you can upload the image here, and it will match a color palette to the images. So get help with color. And then font. Font is so important. And I took a Coursera class about 10 years ago on font, and it is amazing when you learn the history of font, like going back to what was chosen for the London Underground or the Paris Metro, hundreds of years ago. This is not new. And so explore font because it will change the look and feel of your site. Don't just accept the basics. Don't skimp on font analysis. And you can find lots of tips for this. I just put a few, mix serif and sans serif and make use of italics. And then finding inspiration. If you are struggling like me, go and look at 5 different sites and see what they have in common. See how they structure a header and footer and contact section. And this site right here is where I got my haircut this week in Newtown. And I decided this would be a site that I would try to build something with for this demo. And you can see it's not super fancy, but it gets the job done for the hair salon. They got my business. They provide what they need to provide. And then the WordPress style book can come in very handy of combining some of the previous tips. You can use the style book to see what fonts and colors look like ahead of time and play with this area of WordPress. So there are some styling tools you can look at before you get started. Okay, so let's go back to this. So this was what I was thinking of when I thought, how long would it take me to find patterns to recreate this site? And I got a decent amount done where it's close. So the other site, it had a logo in the header. So instead of my WordPress site, I might swap that out with an image. The get started could be book now. It has the social media, and this pattern came from the pattern library. So it's one of these headers, and I just picked the header. So that was a 1-minute endeavor to find the right matching header. Then in that website, the hair salon, there was just a big photo. So that's easy. Hero image is easy. I could delete this, or maybe I could put 2 blocks in the bottom where they had the telephone number and the address, and then we're getting really close. Then there's patterns for services. So all I had to do is go here and browse through all the services and see what would work for this. So, and I just did a little bit of editing. So you'd obviously, then the content creation part comes in, the content replacement. Then I would want to put a bunch of hairstyles here. So maybe something fun, it's like advertising, and something maybe about my salon or about me, picture of me. And there's a contact form pattern, as you can imagine. All of these were instant. So I had to have a decent website in, I don't know, if I already knew how to use WordPress and the block editor, then this is an hour maybe setting up the patterns, because I would want to take the time to look around, and then you have some content creation. You could literally hand this off to a business. So it's pretty cool. And you're relying on a designer's pattern creation. So a couple other tips that were just things to look for in your pattern library if you're searching for it. A lot of these come with page patterns, so this reduces even more. So maybe they have a contact page or an about page. That makes it really easy to have a multi-page website, and then you can tweak each of the page patterns, duplicate, change. Synced patterns are a very cool thing that's relatively new and still evolving. So this might be, say you write a blog post every week about your business, and you will always want to have a CTA at the end with some offer, and you always want it to be the same layout. You can have a synced pattern that locks the layout. You just insert it, and it lets you change the image, CTA, the link to the offer, And if you want to then later change the layout or the color or something, it will change all of the patterns everywhere. So this might also, I have a resume site I built with WordPress where each post is my resume entry, job entry, or the job I had. And I could have a synced pattern for that. And I could then, if I decide I want to change the layout or the color or the font in 6 months, I just go and change the one synced pattern and it'll change it everywhere on my site. So this is a very cool tool for reusable blocks. And then block styles, I mentioned that before. So this is a bunch of patterns from the same pattern library from that same site I was demoing, and I just picked the different block style for each one of these. So it's built-in contrast and at the click of a button. And it's not too hard either to change that on an individual block level with the styling tools. Yep. All right, so that was my design journey. and I hope that the tips and tricks might help you, or if you have a friend that is building a website and they need tips, these are really helpful for getting started, I think.
Excellent. All right, thanks so much, Autumn. It was really interesting. I have been trying to force myself at the moment to use patterns more and really kind of lean into the block editor. And it's scary because it's new, and I'm like, I've been doing it the same way for so long. And I don't know if I really want to give my customers the power to make design decisions. That's the thing that terrifies me the most.
Yeah.
So for us, it's been really about making sure that we remove all of the other parts and only give them the ones that we want them to be using.
Yeah.
And that's been excellent because we can create them their own pattern library that they can choose from.
Yep.
And they have the illusion of control without actual control, which has been excellent. What's your number one tip for, like, if you're diving into starting to use patterns? Like, what would you say is, like, if someone has never used patterns before and they wanted to start it, what would be your sort of number one thing that you would say to try and do or, like, test out or play around with?
Maybe it would be good to just work with the pattern, duplicate it, and change things in it. So you first see how they're made, and then how you can customize it to fit your needs. So that would just start with the pattern, forget about the whole page layout, and play with the styling tools. Understand the difference between global styles, block styles, when you want to make a change to the whole site versus just something granular. That can be a learning. I thought it was a learning curve of understanding all the different types of styles in WordPress editor.
I love that. I also love your advice about just like taking someone's existing site and just trying to replicate it as a way to learn.
Yeah.
That's how we, so I teach HTML and CSS to people, and that's what we tell them to do. I don't know why I never thought to try that with patterns.
Yeah, I think that's a great exercise.
It's a great piece of advice. All right, do we have any questions from the audience for Autumn about her experience using patterns? And how we can make our developers and just the general public be better designers. Any questions?
We should all be better designers.
Yep, just up the back here. So we've got a couple in the back row. Just going to bring your microphone up. Yeah, so we've got one over there and we've got two up the back here. We'll get to you, I promise. We've got plenty of time. So we'll just get you to wait for the microphones because otherwise it won't be captured on the recording and people who are watching on the live stream at home won't be able to hear you. So take it away.
I hope this question is going to make sense. So I understand page builders right now, they don't really work with patterns, right? So Gutenberg is like, the way I see it is kind of like the future, especially the way you described it, because back in the day, the reason why page builders were made was because it was helping people like streamline designing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a little bit like, what is your opinion on this? And are we gonna move away from page builders and go more and more into like Gutenberg and native WordPress stuff?
Yeah, my view is that the block editor is the page builder. So why would you need Elementor when you have the block editor? But will acknowledge that, right, Elementor is already established and the block editor was going through some growing pains, but it's a lot smoother now. So you shouldn't need Elementor. You should be able to find a pattern library and use the block editor. Yeah.
Right, we had a couple at the back, I think.
Thanks.
Yep.
Hey, thank you for championing the blocks. I appreciate that. With the blocks, I run an agency, and we've always used page builders or hard development on the classic theme, just to kind of build our own themes out. And recently, we have dived into the blocks and looking at how we can streamline that to bring it to client sites and stuff. We hit a brick wall with documentation for developers. There's either external third-party sites, or there's Reddit forums, or there's Slack groups, but I cannot, there's helpful pages for like how to use the block editor from a client perspective, which is fantastic, but to develop blocks that hook into different bits and pieces. For an example, the other day we just wanted to put a background image on a group, like a group div, put a background image on it. It's like, yeah, the button's right there, but the button wasn't there. We had to go and put a hook into I didn't even know where it was, the theme.json. But there was no documentation about that. Someone just said, oh, I found this on a random blog somewhere else. Like, there needs to be better documentation for agencies to pick it up.
And so you're looking in
Is that coming in the pipeline? Is there plans for that? Or?
So when I was doing this talk, I looked up a lot of things in the .org documentation, right? So let's see, one thing I looked up was block style variations, so I made sure I was talking correctly about it.
And that's fine if you feel otherwise.
So are you saying you're not finding what you need here?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a problem. You should be able to find it, and I would say ping.
But this is from the block editor. I'm talking about the development side of things for an actual developer, not.
Yeah, so I think the block theme handbook is very much targeted at theme developers more so than individuals. So there's two separate documentation things here. I'm going to jump in here if that's okay, Autumn.
Please.
I actually have worked with the documentation team. So the documentation is for users, but the block theme handbook does go into more detail if you dive into it for developers. But having said that, they are maintained by different teams. So it is, I think, always going to be a challenge that any open source platform has in maintaining documentation. And I agree with you. I think it would be great to have better documentation for that. So if there's anyone who is interested in helping with that, I'm sure that they could use some more contributors right now. But yeah, definitely the block theme handbook is probably where you want to get started looking for the developer-focused documentation there, rather than sort of the regular document. They're two separate. They're literally two separate WordPress installs, but they're two separate sites. One is for documentation, and the other one is for developers. Does that help?
Yeah, awesome. I'll check it out again.
I also think Carolina Newmark has a course on creating blocks and how to develop them.
Yeah, there is definitely some stuff on the training. So I think we've got a talk maybe tomorrow on WordPress, the WordPress training team. And there are definitely some great tutorials and that sort of thing out there. But again, because there's so much happening with the block editor,
I think that's a problem.
It's hard because something that was made 6 months ago might not be super relevant anymore. So 100%.
Yes. And if you want to message me or tell me later exactly what you mean, I will pass that on to the documentation team or fix it myself.
All right, I think we had another question up the back here in the middle.
Thanks. It's just a logistics question. Can we get a copy of your slides? Because I didn't get some of the URLs and things like that.
Yes, of course. Is there?
With the conference?
Yeah. So in the next sort of 3 days or so, probably, the recordings from all of the talks as well as the slides will be made available on the website. So keep your eyes posted for that there.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Autumn? Yeah, we've got one down here.
My question relates to dealing with customers and the supply of their images. So if we have a pattern that's beautifully laid out with the right ratios, my experience has been quite often customers come along with very expensively sourced professional photographs of their products or their models or whatever the images are, but they don't fit the ratio that we've set up.
Yeah.
What's your experience in either cropping their beautiful photos to fit the pattern or requesting them for different images?
Yeah, I think content, in the projects I've worked on that have had content, that is always the biggest problem, because the content kind of dictates things, like you said, like the image. So I don't have a great answer for that, except for to communicate that, like the first thing before you sign up for doing any collaboration with someone, discuss content first. But when you're given an image and you need to crop it, I guess be creative. Like, can you make it a circle? Can you make it have a, I don't know, border that blocks the missing part or the missing ratio? Can you add something that is fun text on a part of the image that that's blank space if it's not fitting the whole ratio? I don't think there's one easy solution.
I'll throw in there as well, like what we do with our customers, because we've run into this same problem, is we give them requirements up front.
Yeah.
Like, you must provide us with X number of images that are this ratio and this ratio and this ratio, and kind of flip it back on them. Like, you need to provide us with this sort of ratio of images, and we actually get them to do that before we even start the project. So they have to provide us their content before we would start the design work, so that we know what we're working with up front. And I think pushing back on customers, because it's all well and good to create design, but as you said, Autumn, the minute that you get the real life photos in there, it's sort of rubbish. So get those real life photos as early as you can, and make that clear before someone even signs a contract. Like, you need to give us these images first.
Mm-hmm.
Got a question over here, Sandra. Just give us a moment for us to run around the microphone.
I was going to say, maybe not so much a question, but maybe an add-on to that. So I come from a design background. I think there's also a lot of software out there, free software, that you can use to make minute changes to images as well, like batch resize. And for example, product images, if they've got like a certain background on some and then another type of background on another, you can run it through, like remove the background and make it like a transparent PNG. So that can kind of like unify the look of those product images as well. So there's like little workarounds and stuff that can be done as well.
That's actually a very, very good tip of like finding bulk processing image programs or things to strip backgrounds, so maybe you can solve your problem. Like if you have a bunch of headshots and they're the wrong ratio, if you take the background out, then you don't have a ratio anymore. You can just stick it somewhere like that. Yeah.
Right, do we have any more questions for Autumn? Otherwise I have one more. Any more? Anyone else? No? Okay. So my last question for you, Autumn, is to do with sort of developing within the block editor. So when you're creating themes and patterns and stuff like that, and you're using blocks, in your experience, is it better to try and lean as much as possible into using the built-in tools? Or like, where should we stop with writing code to, say, style a particular block to look the way that we want to, versus using what's built in? Because my experience, at least, has been that the ability to customize these blocks is constantly improving.
Yeah.
But it's not at the point we need it yet. Like, you still don't have the same responsive control that you do with something like Elementor, or creating your own thing where you can write media queries. So where do you stop? And is there a best practice for how we should be applying our own custom styles using code within the block editor?
That is a very good question. Isabel, do you want to comment on it? Isabel is a co-worker, and she actually works on the core.
Yeah, so the media queries is an interesting one because it's something that's been ongoing for ages. There's a lot of back and forth. If you go and look in the Gutenberg repo, there's endless discussions about how responsive control should be implemented. And I'm afraid it's probably not going to be in the next couple of releases at least, because there hasn't been a decision on the best way to do that yet. So that's one thing. But for styling in general, and I assume that we're speaking about block themes and you're using the site editor,
Yeah.
you already have UI to apply custom CSS to specific blocks. So if you're looking at adding custom styles for core blocks, excluding media queries, then I'd say that's the best way to do it. You can also do that from your theme.json. If you're building a theme, you can add custom CSS to the blocks in the theme.json style section, which is pretty much the same as doing that through the UI. Same effect. Yeah, so that's what I'd recommend in terms of adding custom styling for blocks.
What about if you're not using a full block theme? So a lot of our existing sites are using Gutenberg, so they're using the block editor for creating content for posts and pages and that sort of thing. But they're legacy sites that have been around for 5 or 10 years, so changing the theme is not really practical at a site at that scale. Moving them onto a full site editing theme might not be feasible, but we can still utilise patterns and blocks and that sort of thing within the editor. So in a situation like that, where would you recommend sort of managing and maintaining your styling from a code perspective?
Yeah, I mean, if you're... So, I mean, depending on the kind, you can have classic themes with a theme JSON file, so that goes into a sort of hybrid territory where you could potentially... You could apply. So when we implemented custom CSS for blocks, we made sure that it would work with themes that were still using the customizer. So you can use the sort of legacy way of adding custom CSS too, and that will work if you have a hybrid theme. And obviously, if you have a classic theme, then I mean, what the best practice was for classic themes of either adding the styles to the theme style sheet, or if you're doing it through the UI using the custom CSS and the customizer, that still applies. That's not going anywhere anytime soon.
All right, any last questions for Autumn or her assistant?